crush that.
But thank you, Brandon. Back to the NFL now. Packers came away with a win against the Panthers last week, but Aaron Rodgers did not play up to his typical standards. 143 yards and 1 touchdown. But he isn't worried about that turning into a trend. Take a listen to this.
As hard as it is to be great every single week, when the expectation is so high and the preparation is what it is, I think it's kind of hard to suck back-to-back weeks as well.
Aaron Rodgers' hat is always just a little too big for him. After last week's performance, Rodgers now a big underdog.
Awesome take,
to
Jenna.
Mahomes in the MVP race. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you guys are the best. Thank you. That according to Fox Bet Sportsbook. Rodgers got a great opportunity to make up some ground against the 10-4 Titans. We got Mike Vick back with us now. Mike, would a win over Tennessee put Aaron Rodgers back in striking distance of Mahomes in the MVP race?
I mean, it could, but and it will make the conversation more relevant in terms of Aaron Rodgers getting back into the race and getting close and gaining some ground on Patrick Mahomes. But he's about to face the Atlanta Falcons, and the Atlanta Falcons defense hasn't played well all season. So while I think Patrick is going to light it up and I think Rodgers is going to light it up, you know, it's just not going to serve well for Aaron. And while he's had a great season and done some great things, you know, I think the conversation ends this weekend because Patrick's going to light it up and he won't play in week 17 versus, you know, whatever opponent they play. You know, I know he'll be sitting out because they have everything pretty much locked up. So it's probably a done deal, but it's been a great MVP race and got 2 of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League competing down the stretch and making it very interesting. But, you know, I think the conversation will probably be irrelevant after this weekend.
Yeah, listen, I think Mike makes some really good points, but I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball in this conversation. I think Titans-Packers is going to end up being the single most important game played by any two teams all season when it comes to MVP voting, because it's going to determine who finishes second. And that's valuable. It's relevant. Like, is it going to be Derrick Henry or Aaron Rodgers? Because we know who's going to win it. Mahomes is going to win it. His team's going to go 15-1. He's going to throw 5,000 yards. He's going to throw for 40-some touchdowns with 5-6 interceptions. He's going to win it. Who's going to finish second to him? This guy, who might rush for 2,000, or Rodgers, who already has a handful of MVPs, deserves them all, by the way, maybe deserves one more than he has, who is having a spectacular season, just has the bad fortune, him being Aaron Rodgers, of going up against an all-time Patrick Mahomes season. So the MVP race is over. But second place is still alive. And I don't know who's going to get it, Rodgers or Derrick Henry, because if Derrick Henry, Brandon, gets 2,000 yards and the Titans go 11-5 or 12-4, he's got to at least be considered as the second most valuable player in the league.
Yeah, you made a lot of great points there, Nick. And, you know, I definitely agree with you when you talk about Derrick Henry. You know, I said that last week. If this guy goes for 2,000 yards, he will be the MVP. He should be the MVP. We just don't see that often. But look, guys, to have this conversation and make it easy, you know, I put together my NFL MVP race hierarchy. So I want to show you what it looked like last week. Okay, so if you take a look here, this is called the family vacation. And it's a great picture to help us paint how it forms and how it plays out in the NFL. Just stay with me here. Last week, right, we were talking about who is it? Is it Mahomes? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Right? Because Mahomes was at the front of the jet ski. That's where you're the leader. You have all the power. And then all of a sudden we start really looking at all the major categories, statistical categories, and it was Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers. So I was like, yeah, Aaron Rodgers needs to be in front of the jet ski. And then he goes and plays the Carolina Panthers, and he throws for 143 yards. And before we even go to what it looks like now, you got Derrick Henry out there. He was emerging. Guys were like, oh, this dude's having a lights-out season, stiff-arming people to the ground, hurting their heads. And then he got on his own jet ski. Russell Wilson in the back. Russell Wilson, what happened? That's the most uncomfortable place you can be. You were actually leading. You were, at one point in the season, you were on the front of the jet ski. And now he's in the back. And you know, if you're back there, anything can happen. Any major wave, any turn from Aaron Rodgers or Mahomes, you could just go flying off of that thing. And then on the boat, oh, you know, Wilds was arguing and fighting for Big Ben, and I was fighting for Josh Allen. They were having some good years. Josh Allen's having a good year. So look, here's how it looks today. So I want to show you guys what's going on. So let's look at the update. Whoa! Whoa! What do you see? Oh my goodness! Yeah, so now, look, Patrick Mahomes, let's start there. Patrick Mahomes, there's nothing that can happen now. After that outing last week, throwing for 143 yards, and Patrick Mahomes throwing for 254 yards, 3 touchdowns, he is the clear-cut favorite. He is leading this thing. Big Ben, I don't know what happened to Big Ben's clothes. He's now in the water. Russell Wilson, Russell hit the...
No life jacket.
You see him, Mike?
Big Ben, no life jacket, no life. Like, come on, man. Y'all gonna leave my man Ben to drown?
Wow. Do you agree with this, right? You got Russell Wilson in the air. He's about to fall off. Derrick Henry still trying to go for 2K. He wants to be the MVP.
I know when there's official voting that this is the graphic and the statistics that they look at. All the voters say, like, all right, well, who's on the front of the jet skis? I think it's very valid. I'm going to ask Nick, because Nick is like the resident statistician, even though Dusty is behind the scenes. What if Derrick Henry starts to get near Eric Dickerson? What if he does so well in these last 2 games? Is there anything he can do where you don't think with your heart, think with your statistician mind?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Whoa.
If he gets the most rushing yards ever, then sure, give him the MVP. But that because
I agree.
Not just because he'd be setting that record, and I'll throw it to you, Vic, but because that would mean in the final 2 weeks of the year, he had 550 yards rushing. He would have had to go back to back like 250, 300. And so it's not just he would have set the record, he would have finished with the greatest finishing 2 games in the history of the league, getting his team to 12-4. That would be enough. Like, that's what you would need to overtake Mahomes, I think. And I think Derrick Henry very well might get to 2,000, but getting to 2,200 is a bridge too far even for him.
Wow.
Yeah, if Derrick Henry can have 2 back-to-back good weeks, man, it might propel him and put him in a position where he can ultimately win it. That'd be a beautiful thing to see a running back win the MVP, but ultimately we know that it belongs to the quarterbacks of the National Football League, whether it's Rodgers or whether it's Patrick Mahomes. I think it bodes well to see an MVP, in the hands of a quarterback. So I'm going to stay biased on that.
Oh. Shocking, Mike Vick, quarterback.
Well, listen, here's the deal. I don't think he needs to have the most rushing yards ever. I just think he needs to rush for 2,000 yards to become the MVP. Because, like I said, it just doesn't happen. I just looked up something online real quick, and I said, how many 2,000-yard rushers? There's only been 6 guys to do it. Well, we've seen these type of years from quarterbacks before. This is what it also says. Perhaps the hardest feat to accomplish in sports is rushing for 2,000 yards. They didn't say football. They said perhaps the hardest thing to do in sports. So far in NFL history, only 6 players achieved this. Jamal Lewis, Chris Johnson, Barry Sanders, Terrell Davis, O.J. Simpson, and Eric Dickerson. That's on Bleacher Report. Just Google it. Like, this is a hard thing to do. This is why if this man rushes for 2,000 yards on the head, he should be the MVP.
The only thing